turn it on. Welcome to the October 21st meeting of the Plan and Zoning Commission. I'll read the rules and procedures. The Plan and Zoning Commission is generally an advisory body to the City Council. The City Council will hold a public hearing and make the final decision on all matters. Can you hear me? Before the Commission other than site plans and subdivision plats, unless denials or conditional approvals thereof are appealed. Please contact the City Clerk or Development Services Department staff for details on council hearings. Applicants will be given 10 minutes to present their request. Proponents and then opponents from the public are then allowed to speak in that order, with each speaker allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. Applicant is then allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. The hearing will then be closed and the Commission will discuss and vote on the issue. All comments are to be germane to the item under consideration and speakers are to maintain a courteous manner. Items listed on the consent portion of the agenda will not be individually discussed and will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report unless an individual present or member of the Commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately under the public hearing agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October 7th meeting?
I'll move.
Okay, all those in favor of approval, raise your right hand. And abstentions? Okay, thank you. We have a number of items that are on the consent agenda. I'll read each item and ask if anybody wants to hear it. That means it'll be polled and discussed this evening. Item number 1 is a request from Employers Mutual Casual Company regarding property located at 701 Walnut Street. A, determination as to whether requested rezoning is in conformance with Plan DSM. B, amend Plan DSM to revise the future land use designation from downtown mixed use to park open space. And C, rezone property from DX1 downtown mixed use district to P2 public civic and institutional district to allow development of a public recreation area use. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to have this pulled from consent and discussed? Anyone on the Commission? Okay, item 1 will remain on consent. Item 2 is a request from Jerry's Homes for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for property located at 160 Crossroads Drive and for a Type 2 design alternative in accordance with City Code Section 13592.4B. This will allow the paving in the front yard area that is in excess of the maximum amount allowed, 25% of the total front yard area, as allowed for a house type A. Anyone in the audience who wishes to have this pulled from consent and discussed? We have one person, so this will go to the public hearing. Item number 3 is a request from Jerry's Homes for property located at 166 Crossroads Drive and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow paving in the front yard that is in excess of the maximum allowed 25% of the total front yard area as allowed for a house type A. Is there anyone who wishes to have this item pulled from consent? Anyone on the Commission?
If I could, Chair, I'm sorry, the individual that asked on item 2, I just want to make sure you understand that if it stays on the consent agenda, it'll be approved. The request will be approved. I just want to make sure that the applicant, or whoever was here that raised their hand, understands that.
They're essentially the same request as 2 different parcels, right?
Yes. So are you opposed to the request or in support?
I am opposed to the
Okay.
So yeah, so I'll take both 2 and 3.
Okay.
Request 2 and 3.
Both 2 and 3?
Thank you.
Okay, so on to number 4 is a request from Hy-Vee Food Stores for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Hy-Vee Aisles Online, for property at 2540 East Euclid Avenue, and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow for a drive-through facility within the street-facing side yard. Anyone in the public wish to have this pulled from consent? Commissioners? Okay, item 4 will remain. Item number 5 is a request from Eichener Properties for review and approval of a public hearing site plan, 3700 Merle Hay Road parking lot improvements for property at 3700 Merle Hay Road, and for a Type 2 design alternative to waive requirement to underground existing overhead utility lines. Anyone in the audience who wishes to have this item pulled from the consent agenda? Anyone on the commission?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, item number 6 is a request from Kraus Plus for A, review and approval of a public hearing preliminary plat, Western Gateway Phase 1 preliminary plat for property in the vicinity of 555 17th Street to allow for consolidation of multiple lots. And B, review and approval of a public hearing site plan, Big Grove Brewery, for property in the vicinity of 555 17th Street, and for a Type 2 design alternative to allow use and expansion of an existing parking lot within a yard fronting a primary street, High Street. Anyone in the audience who would like to have this item pulled from consent? Okay, item number 7 is a request from Kemen Industries for review and approval of a public hearing site plan for property located at 1900 Scott Avenue for a Type 2 design alternative to allow construction of an 11,310 square foot building addition with 2.92% transparency on the street-facing facade, which is less than the required 12% transparency, in accordance with workshop warehouse building type. Anyone in the audience who wishes to have this item pulled from consent? Commissioners? Okay. Item 7 will remain. I've talked with staff, and they've said item 8 could also move to consent. I'll read it. City-initiated requests for the following. A, determination as to whether the proposed fourth restated urban revitalization plan for the citywide urban revitalization area to update, amend, and extend the duration of the existing urban revitalization plan is in conformance with Plan DSM. B is determination as to whether the proposed amendment to Des Moines Municipal Code to revise the flat building type into Flat A and Flat B building types is in conformance with Plan DSM. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to have this item pulled and discussed this evening? Anyone on the commission? Okay, we can move.
Can I
Item-
ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Is this is the entire tax incentive and the whole packet that we got?
This was the
right?
presentation, yeah, that we had last meeting, at
Okay.
the 5:30 presentation.
And there's no, if it's on consent, there's no discussion of this evening?
Correct.
Because everyone's, okay.
Did you?
I'm not opposed to it, I'm just surprised no one
Okay.
had wanted
Okay.
to discuss it. Okay.
And
One thing, because not raising my hand, is this the only approval this goes through?
oh,
The city council would actually approve the policy. The commission,
This stuff that goes to city council?
yeah, the commission is only charged with determining whether the urban revitalization plan is in conformance with the Plan DSM comprehensive land use plan, and then whether the proposed amendments to Chapter 135 are in conformance with the comp plan. So really, that's all that the commission's charged with, is making those determinations. And then the official public hearing would occur at the city council. I believe it's on track for a public hearing on November 15th.
Even though the document has placeholders in it, like a bunch of X's and things like that, that's supposed to be approved like that?
I believe the official document would have those redacted lines added back in.
So will remain on, we will have a motion to move that to the consent agenda. Jan?
Yeah, I'll move consent.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, raise your right hand. And all those opposed, the same.
Chris, did
Did
you
you
vote on the motion? You
abstain?
abstained?
Okay,
And that was to move item 8 to the consent agenda?
okay.
Yeah, correct. Abstain, please.
Okay, so now on consent, we'll have item 1, item 4, item 7, and item 8. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Jan? Move? Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your right hand. Okay, unanimous vote there. Okay, we'll start with the first public hearing item, which is item number 2.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the commission, Bert Drost, planning staff for the city of Des Moines. Item number 2 is a request for a type 2 design alternative for the property at 160 Crossroads Drive. The property contains a recently constructed house within a new subdivision that's located along the north side of East County Line Road, just to the south of Polk County's Fort Des Moines Park. The house that's been constructed has a driveway that covers 40% of the front yard area. As you can see from the photo, it's hard to tell where the property lines are, but just know that the driveway covers 40% of the front yard area, and our code only allows single-family houses to cover up to 25% of the front yard area with pavement. So the design alternative would allow them to increase what's allowed from 25% to 40%. I would point out that if this house were to have a full 3-car garage, they would be allowed to pave everything that's immediately in front of it, even if it is in excess of the 25%. So you can see, I apologize that this truck is in the way, but you can see that the garage here has, it's an extra wide garage, so it's like a 2.5 stall garage, but there's no door here on the front. So if there were a third door here, then this existing pavement would be allowed. But anyway, here are a couple other photos that show the character of the area. You can see a house just around the corner. It has a similar type garage where it's a 2-car garage, but it has an additional width for probably for storage or for a wood shop. Here's a site sketch that shows how the lot is configured. Again, this gives you a better take on how they got to the 40%. And our staff recommendation, we are supportive. We feel that they do have a practical difficulty in providing enough paving in front of their garage to allow for an extra third car to be in this driveway without blocking the garage stalls. So we do feel that given the character of this area, the proposed driveway is compatible. So we have recommended approval of the consent, or of the type 2 design alternative. And we did not receive any comment cards or feedback. So any questions for me?
Okay, if no questions of Bert, is the applicant here to speak?
You don't see that?
Okay, since the applicant's not here, would the speaker in opposition to this come forward? You have 5 minutes.
Hi, Carol Maher, frequent flyer. I live in Ward 3. My zip code is 50312. I believe this, Jerry's Homes, or someone similar to Jerry's Homes, has been in front of this commission before with the same sort of request where, oops, I've already laid the driveway, which I gotta think Jerry in his homes knows that he's outside what is allowed in code, and seems to lay it first and then come ask for permission later. The reason we have this, right, is so that we don't have as much concrete, so that things will maybe absorb into pervious ground, right? And so I'm willing to bet Jerry has built all those homes there. All those driveways are bigger than they should be. And this is sort of just a continuation of over and over and over getting approval for more concrete than he should have. And I think at some point, you got to say, no, Jerry, how about you get approval first? And maybe not promise to your buyers that you're going to deliver a driveway that's wider than allowed, just like all of your neighbors. Because we probably started with one, and now it just kind of goes around the whole cul-de-sac and all the development. So that's my feeling. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wished to speak in opposition? And since the applicant isn't here, we can't have a rebuttal, but I would ask staff who's worked with this if they would have any intentions of making this into a 3-car garage in the future.
I can jump in, Bert. I don't know, it's hard to see on the screen there, but that what's kind of a third stall is only about 7 feet wide, so it'd be pretty challenging to, get an overhead door of consequence there. I do know from working with the staff that reviewed this on the residential side that there are a lot of the other houses in this development that are there are 3-car garage houses. These are the only 2 that I'm aware of with this plan, where it's kind of a 2-car with a bonus. So I don't think they've built other one of these yet. I believe this is the first one, and then the next one on the agenda is the follow-up. It's not in place yet. So happy to answer more questions if you have them.
Just to clarify, because basically every street on this block is the exact same design. Every street on this block has that third door. So really we're talking, it's a double plus a third. So we're talking about the fact that they did not put in the door, which is what would have otherwise allowed this concrete. So the issue of there's too much concrete is irrelevant as whether or not they need to have a door in the garage.
No, I guess I would go back to saying that, as Bert alluded to or mentioned in his presentation, there's a maximum amount of impervious area you can have, but the code says you can have as much as you need to serve your garage doors. So if this was a little bit wider and had an overhead door, we would not be here tonight, which most of the other houses have been built are the 3-car. We're not asking them to put a door in here. It's just a matter of should they have more impervious area, and as staff, we think it kind of fits the character of the area because most of them are 3-car garages anyway. So we didn't have any problem with it.
Well, if there are no more questions at this point, we'll close the public hearing and ask commissioners to discuss further.
I'll move staff.
Any other discussion before we vote on the motion? Okay, we have a motion to approve staff. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, that appeared unanimous. So then we'll go on to item 3, which is Bart.
Yeah, sure. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Bert Drost, planning staff for the City of Des Moines again. I believe this one will make Carol a little happier. It's the property next door to the east, a similar situation, but in this case, they're actually asking first. So they've applied for the building permit, and you can see they've started construction on the house, but I don't believe that they've paved the concrete yet. So This is the layout, the original, or this appeal tonight would allow them to pave this additional area here along the east side of the garage. So I believe their plan in this case is a little different in that the bonus garage space is located on the right side of the overhead garage door instead of the left side of the garage door. But again, staff believes that the proposed extra pavement is in character with the surrounding neighborhood, just given the number of other houses in the area that are 3-car garages that have comparable amounts of pavement. So we have recommended approval of this type 2 design alternative as well. Any questions?
Bert, I have a question. It's regarding the last one, but is there a way for staff to keep track of these oopsies, I did it already, type of situations where, if it is the case in the
Right.
future where we just have Jerry's Homes or whoever it is that they continue to do this,
Right.
for you all to see a trend and then share that in your staff reports or
Yeah,
any other
we
way?
could start to put that. Unfortunately, that's not one of the criteria that we can review the appeals against. It's not, one of the criteria is the applicant a habitual offender? It'd be nice if it was, but
Yeah, I understand that we can't use it to.
Yeah,
It's just a way of basically telling us, well, you keep doing this, so
Right.
this has got to stop at some point, right?
And then in their defense, and I'm usually not one to, be in a hurry to help it, skirt the rules or anything like that. So I do think that, but I do need to offer up that they were issued a permit for that house. But they submitted originally the proposal came in with the full pavement. They were advised that that was going to require a type 2, and we couldn't issue a permit. So they gave us a different site plan that showed it removed so they could get started. And then they were going to come back and ask, and then they forgot to come back and ask. And so it is on them that it's their bad that they forgot through the process. But they were aware and had expressed to us the intent to do this in the right order. It just got dropped. And but so it's not quite as black and white that, they were skirting the rules as it might appear.
I have a question. Does staff know if you put a third-car garage, would the setbacks, would they be able to meet the setbacks on a 60-foot wide lot?
it would probably be pretty tight. I think it's 7 feet minimum on one side, 15 total. And then
Looks like they have a half a foot on each side. Well, you said
Well,
15 total?
Yeah,
So
so-
they got their 15.
So I think,
So no.
right.
Not with this floor plan. I mean, not if the garage could, if you could shave that 18-foot width down to 17 feet or something, then, you know what I mean?
Well,
But,
it does beg the question, they come back and ask for forgiveness or resubmit a site plan when a couple of weeks ago we had somebody that put in a driveway that we made them reduce the size of for pretty much the same reason. So
yeah, I'm not remembering the case. Do you recall the street or?
we made them slice off a bit of their driveway because it exceeded the 25% of an existing property.
But I think, wasn't that a case though where we asked them to trim it down so it would taper down to the sidewalk? We let them keep the vast majority of it. It's
Yeah.
just that we were concerned that their
Right
drive
at the
approach
street.
wasn't as wide as, so I don't know that it's, I feel comfortable that it's not, that there's a little difference. I mean, they are providing the taper here, which is the difference between that other one.
Okay.
Can I ask one more, sorry.
What?
What were you saying? I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was finished. No.
One more clarification on this, because in this case, the third stall is theoretically on the right versus the left, or east versus the west in this case. If they just put a door in, do we have any ground to stand on? Number two, the width there is only 7 feet. Is there a minimum of the size width that we need in order for it to be a garage door?
To your point, I think if they would have enough space to add a garage door, I think you probably need minimum 8 feet to put in a garage door. But if they had that and they added a garage door, then you're absolutely right, we would not be here tonight. But they would have to add an overhead door to that. I don't know that our code has an explicit minimum width of a garage door. I've seen some houses that have like a narrow stall for like a golf cart. I don't know if,
That's what I mean, whether,
If-
is a motorcycle door a garage door?
right. We'd have to,
We'll think about that. I don't know. I want to get into it tonight. But what's before you tonight is, you know, 2-car garage, door with this other area, so.
yeah.
So if there are no more questions for staff, does anybody wish to speak in opposition to this item? And the applicant isn't here. So at this point, we will close the public hearing and see what commissioners' thoughts are on this one.
I'll move staff again.
Okay, any further discussion before we vote on the motion? Okay, all those in favor of staff, please raise your right hand. Okay, and thank you. We're ready for item number 5.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Burt Ross, planning staff for the City of Des Moines. Item number 5 is a site plan for the property at the southwest corner of Merle Hay Road and Douglas Avenue, so directly to the south of Merle Hay Mall and Target. This site plan, I guess the triggering event that occurred for the site plan was that there was a tenant improvement permit issued for one of the middle tenant bays within this building, and I believe it was a $73,000 permit value. That was enough to trigger a full site compliance, since our code reads that site improvements cumulative since 2004, once they cumulatively represent more than 50% of the total value of the building, then full site compliance is required. So there's been several tenant improvement permits issued for this property over the years. However, it was just this one that was, I believe, for $73,000 that pushed this property over the edge. So because they're required to do full compliance, they are required to bury all of their overhead utilities. I believe, like I mentioned, their total project cost was $73,000, but the estimate for the utility work came to $200,000 for the lines along the northern edge of the property, and then $16,000 for the pole and line at the southeastern edge of the property. So you can see that the $216,000 cost is more than 3 times the value. The person who wrote the staff report wrote that the two together, if they were required to do the tenant improvements plus the $216,000, that $216,000 would represent 73% of the total cost. So staff looked at that, and we didn't feel that it was reasonable to require them to do $216,000 worth of utility work just for a $78,000 project. So we have recommended approval of the Type 2 design alternative. Again, we did not receive any comment cards back, either in support or opposition. So, any questions?
If no more questions of staff, is the applicant here to speak? You have 10 minutes.
I'm Dan Southwick with Bishop Engineering, 3501 104th Street, Urbandale. I think he's explained most of it there. The biggest issue we have with it is that just the cost is not very effective for it being a $70,000 building permit. We are working with the city and doing around $85,000 of site improvements, not included in that electrical work. So total will be around $300,000 worth of work.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak, anyone else who wishes to speak in support of the applicant? If not, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Come forward, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, Carol Maher, Ward 3, zip codes 50312. At full compliance, I didn't pick that up in the write-up, so I was confused as to what the work was here, so thank you for explaining why that was required. I rode by there today, and I don't know if full compliance includes removing the really large for lease sign that's it's wooden and it's in the ground in the sort of parkway area, not the street side parkway, but the sidewalk side parkway. I'm hoping that maybe it's fully leased. It looks like it's fully leased. It would be great to take down that sign because that's sort of a blight sort of trigger. And it mentions a fence that's going to go up later based on working with the city. It would be interesting to know exactly where that fence was going to go. And if you're going to deal with the dumpsters in the back that have a dumpster enclosure, but the dumpsters aren't closed and the enclosure isn't closed, and the backside of the building is kind of unsightly, and I know the city and developers are putting boatloads of money into Merle Hay to really sex up that area, and it'd be nice if this property, which is right there, could really up their game a little bit and make that strip mall look better. And it wasn't clear to me in looking at the site plan, I'm sorry, what exactly was being done other than cutting out a few parking spots and I think putting in landscaping. So that's my comments. But thank you for the bike racks that are being added because there are none there today. Rock on.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? The applicant has time for 5 minutes for rebuttal, if you wish.
So I'll just do a rebuttal on a couple of our questions here. I know one of the concerns was the landscaping in the back there, and I know there's quite a bit of evergreen trees that kind of block that from that southerly view there from the residential side of it. And that's something we could work with city staff with as well to make sure that that is adequate and something you guys are happy with. And then as far as landscaping, there's going to be landscaping included along the Merle Hay side there to kind of clean that up along the frontage. So hopefully that kind of beautifies that and also is kind of congruent with what they're trying to do there with that all the improvements they're doing at the mall. So that kind of beautifies that whole area. I know they're doing some work across the street as well. So in working with city staff, I'm hoping we're kind of keeping that same continuity throughout there. That way that entire corner is coming up. We want it to look nice as well, obviously. So I think, does that address most of your questions for it?
I think the sign.
The sign.
The sign, this would be fully leased here, so I am not the owner of it. I'm with Bishop Engineering, but that is something I can supply to city staff, that answer, if that's something.
When I look at Google Street View, I think there's a temporary marketing sign of pretty decent size that maybe Carol is referring to that's out front. So I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head how long those are allowed to remain in place by the zoning code process, but we can look into it. But it's not a permanent installation, and the site plan is not going to give it any rights.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we go into the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing, and commissioners, what are your thoughts?
I'll move staff.
Okay, any further discussion? Chris?
Yeah, I would like to propose an alternative motion. Is that all right? Or how, can we discuss for a quick second?
Friendly amendment?
What is it?
All right, well, let me explain. I even took notes to make sure I don't ruin your whole night. So on one part, there's been some conversations this past week, and I want to say I'm excited to learn that the Director of Development Services said that sort of a plan for how to consistently deal with this undergrounding is going to be brought forward within the next 71 days. That's awesome. So within 71 days, we should have a plan brought forward on how we will consistently actually manage these undergrounding issues in an equitable manner. But the reason I want to pull this off was the site is a perfect example of the mixed objectives that we're requiring, and I think we should be giving more thought than just a straight waiving of them for a few reasons. The first is the cost is extremely high. There's a very extremely high cost relative to what the actual project is here. I was curious on the triggering as well, so I appreciate the clarification there. I think it makes sense on the surface to say this is an unreasonable cost. Fully agree. I don't think we should be asking them to bear this cost, but we are asking a private citizen to bear the cost of improving a public asset that has an artificially high cost, right? We know that the cost of these will go down in bulk. For example, CenturyLink has an estimate where it says that it's only economically viable for them to underground once they have 27 properties in a row. Sorry, over 25, I'm not sure if it's 27. So the point is, once we're at 25 or more, that's the only time this becomes economically viable. Utility lines are not different, right? This is all the same driver of cost. This applicant at the same time is putting in trees, which we want. Awesome. I flew back the other day from Houston. It's really, really awesome coming into Des Moines and seeing what's a comparative forest compared to Houston, which you can make your own conclusions about Houston, but it's pretty awe-inspiring and awesome that we've had a commitment to trees. However, we should expect that those trees will someday grow to influence the integrity of this grid at this point, which means we're going to be adding in more tree trimming to the site, and we're going to be adding in more risk. As we see more climate change, where we're seeing storms burden our community with repair and replacement costs. We're talking about loss of businesses in this area when we don't have power there. We're talking about impact on those communities when we have loss of structure there. And this is a mid-American asset, which ratepayers are already paying and already being charged for upkeep on. Now we're asking for citizens to do something to reduce the risk of downing time on this asset, when the present value of this asset, just for the right to deliver electricity to this small property alone, is worth over $750,000 present value, depending on their IRR. So we're talking about an expensive, valuable resource. We know that we lose access to that resource when we don't have it up. We know we are losing more and more of them if we have trees in the middle of them. We also know that we're having this private company is able to actually reduce our tree canopy in order to actually maintain this asset and not have risk to that asset going down. I guess I would sort of say, I'm not entirely sure why we're putting the cost for something that's their private citizens, this group. When it goes down, I don't know why we are allowed to put it back up. This is a large transmission piece within this neighborhood. This is something that we should probably have a more thoughtful idea on who actually bears the burden of reducing our access to risk from these types of resources. I know that's a big issue. I understand. Well, I guess I would have a preference that the city should own our own assets that give our access to our services. I know that's like way outside of bounds of us at the moment. However, I would hope that we're going to give development department the 71 days, which isn't a lot of time, that they're asking for to allow us to come back with here's how we want to equitably ensure this undergrounding is accounted for. I mean, that's what Will asked for last night. We weren't sure how long it was going to take. Now it's like 71 days. Awesome. So I guess the motion I would like is, number one, to approve the public hearing site plan subject to compliance with all the administrative reviews and comments, which is the first piece of staff. But I'd like to amend it to defer the required undergrounding of the utility lines for 1 year. This gives the opportunity for development services to come back in a time period which seems like it's right around the corner to tell us, hey, this is how we do it otherwise. And also, again, it protects the citizens and our ordinances from taking away their opportunity to have access to services if we do have effects of these going down, and protects our ordinance because it spent a lot of time to get this ordinance right. If it's right, we should push to ensure it's enforced. If it needs modified, we'll know in 71 days. So my modification would be, I would like to defer versus waive for 1 year on this, so we don't keep chipping away at the ordinance when right now it seems like we're right around the corner with an answer.
We are working on the issue. I think we're 71 days-ish looking to have some concepts to present at a workshop to the city council to get direction from them on what path they want us to take. So I want to clarify that we're not 71 days away from like a hard recommendation from staff that this is what we're going to do. We're going to put together some concepts for the council to give us direction on that we would then run with. I guess without it you certainly could defer this. I think that's putting some risk and burden on the applicant, but that's within the commission's purview. I think the challenge I have is that I don't know exactly what's going to end up out of this, and people have a right to due process, and there's a request before us. My recommendation is that the commission review this under the code that's on the books now. I know that can be challenging in the sense that we're always, if something is being looked at, but we're always looking at something. So if we're always pushing stuff off, I have a long list of things that we're evaluating, including site plan triggers and the utility work and accessory dwelling units and all these different items that we're going to continue to be looking at them. So there's always, where do you draw the line? And so as staff, we'd recommended, approval, and we're processing these as they come forward. I'll leave it, the commission, you guys are, we're just making a recommendation. You guys are making a decision. And, the applicant does have the ability to appeal if they wanted to city council, if they didn't want to wait. So there is a relief valve if that's a problem for them. But as staff, we're suggesting we move forward and go from there.
And I want to make sure, I'm not saying we don't move forward. I think the landscaping that's being proposed here is awesome. I think the fencing looks awesome. I mean, I think that adding the islands makes a ton of sense. But I just want to make sure that we have something that's coming down the pipe. We have proposals. We know that every time we waive, we're starting a precedent where we're actually minimizing the effect of that ordinance if we're going to be treating everyone equitably. And if we need time, let's take time. So let's take a year and let's come back then. And if this does build up to become an issue, well, it'll probably get solved sooner if City Council knows it's an issue.
If I might interject, thank you, Commissioner Draper, for the very eloquent comments and request for a friendly amendment. We, at this point, then procedurally would have the person who make the motion determine whether they wish to accept that friendly amendment or reject it. And if it is rejected, then you will vote up or down on the straight motion, which was to move staff. If that fails, then we would be able to entertain an additional motion in which you may include the recommendation that you would like to see added. Good?
Yeah, I'll accept the friendly amendment, and we can vote on that.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Emily.
Sorry, I had to take a work call, so I missed a little bit. So you moved staff, and then he added an amendment to defer a year.
Yeah, so the motion, if the friendly amendment is accepted, would be approve the public hearing site plan subject to compliance with all administrative review comments and defer the required undergrounding of the utility service lines for 1 year.
Any other discussion before the vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, go ahead, or can he come and rebut at this point? I don't think you can make a comment at this point. I'm sorry, we closed the public hearing. Johnny, did you?
I just want to make a comment. Perhaps, I think a year may be a little too soon. So if you would consider perhaps a 2 year, maybe 3 years on your friendly amendment.
I mean, I'm open to that. My understanding from last time was that we didn't want to put things too far out so we lose track of it, but I don't think we're getting it resolved in less than 18 months.
And that's basically the reason why I was bringing that up is last time we said 3 years for that sidewalk, which we weren't informed of the cost of the sidewalk. Whereas in this situation, we do have a figure in front of us that 200,000 plus. I mean, I want to be a little fair. I know the owner is not here to share his perspective either. So if you take another friendly amendment to your amendment, perhaps considering 2 years instead of one.
I'd be happy with 2 or 3.
Actually, technically, I think Jan would have to accept.
Sorry.
Because it's her motion. So.
The friendly amendment was official or?
Well, I don't think it changes it that much, so if you, go ahead. Okay, I'll accept that.
So was it 2 or 3, Johnny?
I'm fine with either. I just think we shouldn't be deciding this if it's in process. We should make sure that if we have a more equitable way to do it. So what we'd be saying, I guess, you'd be friendly recommending a change that would friendly change to the second part being defer the required undergrounding of the utility service lines for 3 years. And as a legal point of order, my understanding is that if this thing sells or something else, that triggers something else. If there's some other reason that triggers, now we're back to sort of essentially relooking at it again. This is only if nothing happens, nothing changes on this site within 3 years, we're going to have to come back and evaluate this again. Is that right?
Well, this would become a note on the site plan, and it'd be enforceable through the site plan ordinance. So even if it was sold, the new owner would have the obligation for this temporary waiver once it expires.
Perfect.
So, and Jan, you accepted, now did we decide on 2 or 3 years?
I had 3.
3, okay. So, motion, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand.
What? No.
We have Todd, we have Chris, Emily, George.
All those opposed? Same? Okay. Thank you. Item number 6, request from Kraus Plus.
The site plan was approved, however, the waiver of the utilities is granted for a temporary period of 3 years.
Okay, I just couldn't see the numbers as all.
Oh, and the motion carried 5-4.
All right, you said item 6?
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 6 is the request from Kraus Plus for the property in the vicinity of 555 17th Street. It's in the former Crescent Chevrolet building where the Big Grove Brewery is looking to go into the eastern portion of the building. The site's been on the commission's agenda a couple times in the past, once for street and alley vacation and another time for rezoning to an MX2 district. The request tonight is twofold. The first part is to replat the multiple parcels into a single 1.77 acre lot. And then the second is to approve a public hearing site plan, and the type 2 design alternative that's required is to allow a parking lot to be within a front yard area. And that front yard area would be along the north property line abutting High Street. So the subject property, like I said, was recently rezoned to MX2 district. The plat really just covers the western main portion of the property. I'll get to that here quickly. So you can see the plat up here. It shows how the property lines would be laid out. I believe there's a property line in this general vicinity right here. So then this narrow triangular area to the east would be an outlot. And this shows a better, this is the right-of-way that's being assembled with that property to the west. And then this is the map that shows what the site plan covers. And then this photo shows or the street view. Picture shows the view from 17th Street and High Street. This white building here has already been demolished, and they're replacing that with additional parking. Since this property is zoned MX2, it's not allowed to have off-street parking within the front yard area. And in this situation, since there's essentially public streets on 3 sides, it's kind of hard to put off-street parking anywhere on the lot that's not within the front yard area. So the type 2 design alternative is to allow this parking here to be expanded within the area that's between the building and High Street. And then this is that site plan. You can see the Crescent Chevrolet building would be divided into several tenants. The Big Grove Brewery would be located on the eastern end. They would have a substantial patio along at the southeast corner of the site. And then here at the north, this shows the off-street parking area. That white building I showed you in the photo is in this general area right here. So again, that type 2 design alternatives for that parking. Staff has recommended approval of both. I don't believe we received any comment cards in support or opposition to the request, so we have recommended approval. So any questions for me tonight?
I apologize. Didn't this go through on consent, or am I thought the only thing left was 9.
No, somebody moved.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
If no further questions for staff, is the applicant here to present?
Excuse me, Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nate Easter, 1459 Grand Avenue here in Des Moines. I'm here to answer questions. Want to thank staff and for all their time on this project. We're really excited for this project to happen. As staff mentioned, we've seen this a couple times before in different forms, so we're really excited to get this project going. We think it's really great for this area to get going. So here to answer any questions.
On the 16th Street access,
excuse me.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just had a question about the presentation.
Okay. We need to let the commission gets the first shot at him. Sir?
So, yeah. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at this point? Okay, thank you. Now, is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this request? Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to the request? Come forward, state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes.
Paula Noonan for 1520 High Street, 50309. We had questions about, when we got the grid, about the 16th Street access, if that is going to be taken away, the part between High Street and Linden Street, and if this plan also encompasses taking away all access from Linden Street. Part of our issue with it is that we have a shared easement where utilities and trucks come in to take our dumpsters, etc. This is going to cancel out any access to our property for those services, which puts an undue financial burden on us. We're a small nonprofit that's been there for 20 years. And we were also worried about the density of some of this project and the impact of that on access to the streets, because the proposed property and the 2 drawings that we received in the packet showed that our only access points now to our building would just be High Street only, or coming up 15th Street off Ingersoll. So those are the questions that we have regarding this project right now.
Could you show us on a map what you're talking about exactly?
So this street right here allows this alley access here to where all of our utilities and our dumpsters are. So if this street is now gone and the frontage street here, it only leaves access for the utilities, the services, and for our business to come up from 15th Street and use High Street, or from this other access point from High Street. It closes off these 3 other access points.
Is the east end of that, is the east end from 15th Street, is that still an open alley? Is there access
Yes,
through there?
yes,
So-
it is, and that's part of the concern, is that there's a phase 2 that we were given as part of this project that shows that a 5-story hotel is being proposed for the lot that's right, this is my small business right here. And this proposed lot is supposedly going to be a 125-unit, 5-story hotel, which is going to come across the easement there and close off the easement access over here as well. So then I will be left with no access to the back lot of our building. And our drive that runs along the eastern edge of our building is only large enough for a car. The trucks cannot fit back there to get our garbage. And there's nowhere to move it out front, nowhere to the side. It's a very narrow, long lot.
I should point out that that existing alley here has actually already been vacated and conveyed to,
Those alleys actually were vacated, if my memory is correct, in the 70s when we were looking at so they've been privately held for an extended period of time. The reason I know that is because it came up when we considered the vacation of Linden Street and 16th Street. We didn't hear from this applicant, or this neighbor, but we heard from the other neighbor and looked into that. So you might already have some easement rights to use what was a former alley. Sounds like maybe you said you did. But if you go back to the site plan, you'll see that what's proposed in front of the commission right now, leaves the street open and functioning in the alley, what was an alley with access to it. The vacation of that has already been approved by the council, but Kraus Plus will have to take, or whatever ownership group will maintain that.
yeah, and I'll let the applicant's consultant confirm that this driveway here would remain open. I know from the site plan, there are these lines here that look like they might be gates, but it's just pointing to landscaping type. So I believe their intent is to have that remain open.
Yes, it's the driveway access in, so that's to the parking lot.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition?
Are we able to ask a question that if there is remainder of alley access, does that address the concern that she's raising? Or I'm just trying to make sure I understand the concern. If we know that the alley access is going to be there, is there still concern that I'm missing?
That was our main concern of this project, because it looked as though that street was going to be closed for walkability and no access, according to the drawings that we received and some of the description from the paper layout of the plan that they gave.
Yeah, so, and I don't know where they're planned. There's been several concepts for redevelopment in this whole area from Kraus, and they don't, it was, I think the only thing that's like concrete moving forward is what's before you. When we had the vacations, I think it was maybe this summer or spring, I'm not sure, I think we weren't quite meeting in person yet, but we had kind of the broader discussion about, or we had similar concerns from the neighbor, and I just, that those alleys were vacated a long time ago, but you might actually have an access easement that was recorded as part of that, so you always have that right unless you relinquish that easement. And I'd have to go back and look at what we put in the recommendation for the vacation of the right-of-way, but I was pretty sure we had language in there that there needed to be, continued, like that access needed to continue to be provided for that easement. We can look into that, but.
It's the 16th Street access that needs to remain open if they're taking away the 15th Street access, because the alley runs 15th to 16th.
Right, I see.
There's a proposal that we have with all the drawings, everything was closing it off at both sides, one for walkability and one for a hotel, so
Sure.
that left no access. And we've had access there for 30 plus years.
The applicant has time for rebuttal. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. We're leaving that 16th Street access. I think one of the requirements is that we provide an easement for access to that alley, so we're totally in support. Keeping 16th Street open, we'll maintain it. We're good with doing that. So we fully expect that as part of this project.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Okay. We'll now close the public hearing. And does anyone have a motion to be made?
I just have a question. If we move staff, is that requirement in place then still, or do we need to make that?
No, that requirement was part of the vacation process and would have been, will be recorded, if it hasn't already been recorded, like, I don't know if the land sale is actually taking place, but that would be an easement that'd be recorded when the former right-of-way is sold. Really what's before the commission tonight is, just the waiver of, the fact that there's a parking lot along High Street and we're in the downtown, and then the plat, which I don't think, I don't know, can you go back to, Bert, to the platting sheet? Is that? I would just, it should be on as part of the land sale, but if you want to add an extra condition, I don't think it hurts anything, that all necessary easements for access be provided.
I would move staff with that additional language.
Any further discussion, commissioners? If not, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. And one with you. Okay, we're ready for item number 8, or 9, excuse me. Request from Wesley Life.
All right. I believe we're on item number 9, which is the request from Wesley Life for rezoning. What's going on tonight? Sorry about that. A request for rezoning of property at, sorry about that. Bless you. At 3206 University Avenue, and then 1117 and 1119 33rd Street. So the subject property is located on the south side of University Avenue. It's predominantly zoned P2. However, there are 2 parcels here along 33rd Street that are zoned N5. One of these parcels contains a single-family house, and then the other one is currently vacant. So Wesley Life has recently purchased this property, and they're intending to use it for their Meals on Wheels program. The zoning enforcement officers determined that that use is considered a production and fabrication use, which requires the M3 zoning district. So they are requesting an M3 district tonight, and that would include this property, or the parcel that's already zoned P2, and then these 2 parcels here at the southwest that are zoned N5. And the N5 area would be used to expand the off-street parking lot. So here's a view from, I guess, pictometry. The subject property building is right here. It would be converted to the restaurant and meal assembly use. Then this existing off-street parking lot to the south of the building would be expanded onto this area right here along 33rd Street. So you can see there's 1 house here and 1 vacant lot. That existing house would be removed, and then the off-street parking would be expanded into that area. Here's the sketch provided by the applicant. It does take into consideration a couple of the conditions recommended by staff. One of those is that they're not to have a drive entrance from 33rd Street. We believe that if they're going to be expanding the use here, we should be sure to protect the residential neighborhood to the south So we've recommended the condition that they not have a drive approach from 33rd Street. They're complying with that. We also recommended that they add a sidewalk here along the east side of 33rd Street. There's not currently a sidewalk there, nor is there a sidewalk to the south of here, in front of the three houses immediately to the south, but there is a public sidewalk along the entire west side of 33rd Street. But staff has recommended the condition to require a sidewalk be installed in this area at this time, since it's our goal to get sidewalks piecemealed into the city along all public streets as we can. Then here's a sketch provided by the applicant, and I thought it had a marking on it that showed where we're requiring the sidewalk here, and it should show that there's an existing sidewalk along the west side of the street, but no sidewalk here along the south side. Here's an exhibit that shows what the building would look like when they're done with their building modifications. And then the staff recommendation is in support of the property. I alluded to two of the conditions. I had mentioned the no driveway from 33rd Street and then the sidewalk along 33rd Street on the parcels currently known as 1117 and 1119 33rd Street. And then the third condition was that the parking lot shall be set back at least 30 feet from the parcel adjoining to the south and shall not be any closer to 33rd Street than the existing house on the property immediately to the south. So just go back to this sketch quickly. Our conditions say that they need to provide a 30-foot setback from this property line, which they are providing. And then we've also said that this parking lot shall be no closer to the street than that existing house to the south, and they are complying with that as well. We did get a letter from several of the neighbors, and I'll come back to this. It's long, so I'll put it up on the screen last. But they do make some requests. I also have a letter here from the Drake Neighborhood Association that's in support of the project. And then here's the consent map. We got about 8 cards. Most were in support. 1 card here in opposition, but I'll show these to you now. A couple in support. And 2 more in support. If you need me to zoom in, I can. Otherwise, and this one at the bottom is the one that's in opposition. And then 1 more in opposition, I guess. And this concern was about truck traffic coming onto 33rd, but if you guys implement our condition to not have a driveway onto 33rd Street, then that should be mitigated. And then these next 3 exhibits were from a neighbor to the south who will be using those in his presentation tonight. So, any questions for me?
I just have a question about the recommendation. Is the applicant opposing anything in the staff recommendation?
I don't believe they want to do the sidewalk along 33rd Street. I'll let them make their case. But
And just to clarify for the commission, if it's a zoning condition, then there's no opportunity for that to be waived during the site plan process. But even if there wasn't a zoning condition, it'd still be a requirement of the site plan. It's just that they would have the ability to seek a waiver. We thought it should be a zoning condition just to get it out. It seemed like an appropriate thing to do at this time. Just make sure, that decision's already been made. That was our thinking.
yeah, this is the graphic I thought we had put in this presentation, but it got missed. So here's what the applicant submitted that shows where the city requested the sidewalk, and north is up on this. So we requested the sidewalk along 1117 and 1119 33rd Street. And then this is pointing out the existing sidewalk along the west side of 33rd, and then the fact that there's not any other sidewalk along the east side of 33rd, even though staff's recommending the sidewalk be added here along its subject property. Any other questions?
Can I clear,
Go ahead.
I think 2 weeks ago, Ms. Frank identified that the sidewalk is not something we can waive for cost or something? The regs basically said the sidewalk have to go in, is that right?
Well, I think at the last meeting, we were, for the utility, we have the burial, the utilities, there's the reasonably practical standard that's in the code. And then the commission was discussing, should we think about reasonably practical and costs like we do? And what Glenda was pointing out to the commission is that it's just a hard standard. There's no like reasonably practical language in the code. So it's a hard standard. You're expected to do it unless it's waived.
Any other questions?
I had a question for Bert. I know this is the rezoning stage, so definitely a closer look will happen once the site plan is submitted.
Right.
But did engineering happen to mention anything? It looks like a lot more impervious area is being added on site and not the open space that may be needed to for stormwater purposes or whatnot.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I personally didn't check with our engineering staff to see if they think this layout here would meet our stormwater requirements, but perhaps the applicant will have an idea on that. But you do make a good point that other than this 30-foot paving or setback here and then this landscaped area here along 33rd Street.
So potentially, even if the rezoning is approved tonight, we may see this again if they don't comply with our site plan requirements.
Exactly. If they need any type 2 design alternatives. I'm not aware of any at this time, but if they would need some, it would be back here.
They'd be expected to provide stormwater management, comply with those regulations that engineering manages. So it could be that once it got in the site plan stage, maybe the parking lot has to be smaller to account for a basin, or maybe they're going to do underground, but maybe the applicant might have some insight.
Any other questions?
I need to recuse myself again on this one.
Okay,
Thank you.
Can I ask one last one? As far as parking minimums here, are we close to a parking minimum? Are the site number of stalls defined by parking minimum or defined by desired need?
The requirement would be the minimum, obviously, but I believe, I haven't done the full analysis, but I would guess that they would at least have the minimum. I believe what they're proposing is the desired need for the use, since the Meals on Wheels use, and the applicant can explain it better than me, but they do have quite a few delivery cars that would be parked on site in addition to employee parking, things like that. Okay. So it probably is more parking than what would otherwise be required.
I swear I'll look this up next time. What is our minimum for this type of zoning district?
I would have to look.
It's going to be based on the use. I can look by that, or
The fabrication and production use would require 1 parking space per 2 staff, and then any office space would require the 1 parking space per 400 square feet. And then the restaurant or cafe use would require 1 space per 150 square feet.
Okay, if there's no more questions for Bert, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Shannon Dreyer, representing Wesley Life, and Dan will speak from Slingshot Architecture. So I'd like to spend a little time just sharing with you about the mission and the purpose of the building, and can speak to some of the questions, and then Dan will have more of the details as well. So Wesley Life is a nearly 75-year-old nonprofit in Des Moines serving older adults. We have been operating the Meals on Wheels program since 2006. Right now we're located at 944 18th Street in the Sherman Hill neighborhood. And we send out about 1,000 hot meals a day to folks, older adults and veterans throughout central Iowa, including Polk County and some of Dallas County. We offer regular safety checks on those individuals in addition to the hot meals. So that has led to life-saving interventions. And I just heard about one today where there was a gas leak and the driver smelled it. The client did not. So it's a life-saving program. And we have been looking for a new location for a number of years because the building that we are in now is small and aging, and the kitchen can't keep up with the capacity and need as food insecurity grows throughout our community. So in July, we acquired this building. This building is going to allow us to triple our capacity. So I mentioned 1,000 meals per day. This will allow us to make up to 3,000 meals per day. So that will allow us to serve a growing food insecure population, both in older adults and veterans. It's going to allow us to bring generations together. So the cafe, I believe, was mentioned by Bert. So on the north end of the building would be a public cafe, and then the rest, mostly the rest of the main floor then is that commercial kitchen for the Meals on Wheels operations. There would be some space on the second floor for events that would bring generations together. So we hope to be a hub for that, for old and young to gather, especially with the connections with Drake University adjacent. We're looking forward to bringing a nice dining venue to the community as well, and just being that neighborhood hub. So just a little bit about our activities to date. We have held 4 community meetings in this neighborhood. On August 30th, we met outdoors just in the back of the building there and presented the first concepts to neighbors. We attended the Drake Neighborhood Association meeting on September 9th, met individually with the 33rd Street neighbors on the 21st. We had good weather for all of these. We were outside in that lot meeting with the neighbors. And then October 11th, we held the required meeting through what's required of P&Z, the required neighborhood meeting. So we have collected a lot of good feedback, and I want to thank the neighbors. Many of them are here tonight. Jim and Laura, Stephanie, Deanna, thank you for your input. We have had, I don't know how many iterations. You guys get to do the drawings. And so I think we've come to a lot of really strong and successful agreement. They have helped us improve our plan, and their input has been critical. So a couple of the things from the letter that they showed, there's a letter of support from the Drake Neighborhood Association and then from the 33rd Street neighbors. We'll look forward to hearing from them as well. We have met a number of these conditions, including, these are probably not in the order you have them, Bert, sorry. Improve the parking lot lighting. We plan to do that. The berm with trees, shrubs, or ornamental grass that you've seen in that buffer area. Adjusting the direction of the parking was a really great suggestion as we think about if there were any car lights in the evening or anything like that, to address any lights shining into residences. And then eliminating the access to 33rd on that little cut through, which we heard quite a bit from the neighbors about, even in our first meeting, just how people kind of fly through there and use it as a cut through. So we appreciate your time this evening. I'll let Dan share a little bit more, and we'll hear from the neighbors as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, well, it's up to you. Well, thank you. Dan Drendel, 3922 Brinkwood Road, and Slingshot Architecture, representing Wesley Life tonight. So I do want to run through just kind of what's happening here on the site. The 33rd Street access for trucks in particular was an early neighborhood concern, basically right in the first neighborhood meetings. The neighborhood has been a great collaborator group, lots of very input, but then an invitation to come and sit down with the 33rd Street neighbors actually on the lot that exists, the space between the 1115 house and the house that we're taking down, to talk about that space and that setback. But the access to 33rd, I just want to highlight, we do have truck deliveries that are going to come to the site, and so to solve that condition, you can see the truck movements overlaid on this site plan. So from the driveway on University, which will be our ingress and our outgress here for both cars throughout the day and these deliveries. So a truck will basically come around and back in for delivery and then need to turn in our parking lot and go out. That's really how we can solve that. You can tell that we're going to have stalls that are not parked in during the delivery period, and so Wesley Life will have to manage that, which is fine. There is, and we would ask your consideration to suggest an amendment or another condition here that would allow for the islands as shown, the planting islands as shown in this plan, that would allow for that. It would be great to, again, cover that now as well, that this would be adopted as the intent for that. So that's a request on our part, but to continue explaining how this works. So that's the truck. Meals on Wheels cars will be parked in the lot, and then volunteers will come and park their own cars in the lot and get into a delivery car, and then they will actually circulate through a covered loading area right here. That's the blue arrows, and then go out. So site circulation, obviously the first issue, but relatively easily solved. So this access to 33rd, the neighborhood shared that not only did they not, concerned about truck traffic, but also that this is currently used as a cut through for access through all these lots for cars to cut through from the neighborhood. And so we're also excited to address that need here by shutting down our access here at this point and adding landscape. So we totally agree with the condition number 1 and like that it supports the neighborhood concerns. The sidewalk along the parcel, we would ask that that be removed from the conditions right now and that we continue studying that. The reason is twofold. One, that there are still power lines in place here, and we do want to have a good buffer here. So the power poles would kind of push it back in the space. You can see that in the image down here. So this is looking down 33rd on the streetscape. You can see that we would have to push a sidewalk pretty far into the space here. And so we would kind of set that precedent that it would have to cut through the neighboring parcels pretty deep in the space. That's one thought. The other thought is that we are, the big discussion again about cut through and about access is that the priority on our side to address the neighborhood concerns is to provide a place where people can walk from the neighborhood and get into our site and come to the patio, but to make that clear and to make that not something that would encourage people to walk through the neighboring residential parcels. There's currently a lot of foot traffic right now that cuts through the 115 parcel and a few other parcels. And so they asked that if our landscape solutions here and our sidewalk accesses on our site could make it very clear that that people are not meant to walk on that side of the street and walk through their yards and things, that would really be a help. So at a minimum, we ask that it not be a condition here and still be studied. And for those reasons that Bert shared as well, right, that we have in the other side of our packet here, we did do this markup showing this is where it's being requested. There's a complete sidewalk on the other side of the street. We'd basically like to make that the primary pedestrian path and that it clearly enter our site only at the end of the street and not anywhere in the midpoint of the street to continue to discourage cutting through of pedestrians through other people's yards. So I know we're getting close on time here. That's the really important thing about 2. On number 3, we're in agreement here. We sat in this space with the neighbors. We saw how important it was to not shine headlights into the 1115 home. This buffer is acceptable. We've also gone out and now measured the distance from curb so we can verify what the setback of that home is. And if you work through our numbers right here, we're matching that to the edge of paving. So we're in on that and would ask that you consider adding a condition where there's a reduction of planting islands required in the site plan to allow for our truck movement and the quantity of parking that we are getting here, and to not include the second condition that's on the staff report here. Other than that, you guys did have a question about the parking quantities. They're aligned to the mixed use of the building right now. So we're really sizing the assembly and gathering spaces to align to the mixed use analysis, to try to be mindful of not over parking, but also not producing uses that are oversized or overburdening the parking that's available. And I think we maybe didn't mention the growth. Were you going to say that?
I was going to say, we currently have 21 vehicles in our Meals on Wheels fleet. So those all come with individuals who come and park and then take that vehicle. And with the growth we're projecting in meals, we think that could be anywhere from like 10 to 15 more vehicles. And then, of course, there's requirements based on the restaurant and the assembly space on the second floor.
Great.
Do you want to say anything about stormwater?
The statements that were made about stormwater are accurate. It'll be in the site plan submission, and we'll address those needs. Certainly plan to be, but again, this is just the rezoning. Any questions? We're here, and it's been a great process so far. Really appreciate the neighborhood and their input and discussion.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak in support of the application?
Hi, Stephanie Brennan, 3127 Cottage Grove. So I am right, oh, of course, that's not working for me. Right here. I'm here twofold as an affected neighbor and as the representative for the board for Drake Neighborhood Association. We wholeheartedly support this project. When we bought this, our house a couple years ago, it was always kind of this like, oh, what could that be? Because the building has been empty for so long. And there's been, a couple of times where people have come to maybe do something with it and ask for zoning requests, but Wesley Life's been completely different. They've been super open, communicative, totally transparent. From that first meeting when I had a couple concerns regarding the parking lot, it was, an immediate like, okay, let's modify that. So they've just been really, really wonderful. I think the project itself is super important for our neighborhood. It's also great for, my kids. There's a little cafe there. My kids love playing in that parking lot, so I like seeing that the parking lot's still there, and even better with landscaping. And the board also agrees. We've been super happy with the entire process. They've been really, really open to any negative comments that have come in and have addressed those wholeheartedly. Even some of the postcards that I've seen that were no's, those were people that were at the first meeting. They weren't necessarily at the second meeting and have seen these updated plans. So I'm super excited about the project and super happy with it, and I hope you approve it all. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak in support of the applicant? This is in support.
My name is Jim Kane. My wife and I have lived at 1118 33rd Street for 23 years. We're here to, on behalf of our concerned neighbors on 33rd Street, to share some comments about the proposal. First, I'd like to thank Wesley Life for taking time to meet with us on September 21st and to listen to our concerns about the impact the proposed changes to 1117, 1119 would have on the essential nature of our neighborhood. The revised plan reflects the seriousness with which they attempted to address our concerns. We support the request to rezone parcels 1117, 1119 with grave reservations. While we truly appreciate the changes made as reflected in the site plan before you, the parking lot will still impact the essential nature of our neighborhood. The stretch of 33rd Street on which we live is much narrower than a typical street in Des Moines. If you were to review the parking lot from our front yards, you would see the intrusion it makes into our neighborhood. When we all purchased our homes, it was with the belief we would be surrounded by neighbors and there would be sufficient buffer between the existing parking lots. Since the October 11th neighborhood meeting, we've asked Wesley Life to consider one final change to the design, which is reflected up here. We've asked them to push the buffer back and to remove the 2 parking stalls referenced as 1 and 2 in red type to give a greater buffer. We acknowledge that they already expanded the buffer, and we appreciate that. But it would give us a little bit more breathing room. We very much appreciate Wesley Life's taking steps to deter the use of 33rd Street as a secondary egress to 3206 University. I have a couple of photos I want to show you. The first one, thank you, is the intersection of 33rd and Cottage Grove, and it's a tight space when you're trying to turn on a 33rd when there's a vehicle at the intersection, especially when you're going east and you're trying to make a left-hand turn. You basically have to wait for the car on 33rd Street to clear the intersection so that then you can make your left-hand turn. The second photo illustrates the narrowness of the street and where 2 cars going in opposite directions, barely get by each other. And you keep in mind that when people come through there, they're taking the whole street, not the generous close to the edge of the curb that you see there. The route right now is commonly used as a shortcut between University and Cottage Grove, and we're concerned that that would increase traffic flow if vehicular access wasn't prevented. Our support comes with full expectations of Wesley Life living up to the plans laid out and promises made at our October 11th neighborhood meeting, advocating to the city for the use of a berm with trees, shrubs, and ornamental grasses instead of fencing on the sides of the lot facing 33rd and north of 1115. This alternative is more genuine to the neighborhood, a greater sense of openness, and frankly is more pristine than a wooden fence. Incorporate a rain garden in the green space, if possible. Involve the neighbors on 33rd Street in selecting plantings around the berm and ensuring adequate drainage, since, as somebody pointed out, there's going to be more concrete and less permeable soil, and the use of dark sky lighting to reduce the glare on adjacent residents. Thank you for opportunity to share concerns.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in support? Okay, come forward, state your name and address. You have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Laura Amsler. I live at 1118 33rd Street with Jim. We just wanted to support Wesley Life's proposal to not require the sidewalk in front of, along 1117 and 1119. That is a very short area. It's a very short block anyway, but it's a very short area, and to have this piece of concrete just kind of dropped into green space that we're trying to keep green space, so it add more concrete. It would also just not make sense because it would just be this short little area. And then we would also be concerned that if that were required to be in there, that then precedent would be set to have the sidewalk then go along all the way to the stop sign at Cottage Grove. And there is very little yard space in front of 1115, so the sidewalk would be almost to their front porch. I don't know the address of the house on the corner because the address is on Cottage Grove, but they have a fence along their side of 33rd Street, and they would have to not have a fence or move it. So yeah, we just would support Wesley Life in asking to not require that sidewalk. We do support walkability. I like sidewalks, and we do have that sidewalk right on our side of the street that allows a place for people to walk. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in support of the applicant? If not, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the applicant? Come forward.
Hi, Carol Maher, Ward 3, zip code 50312. Thank you for the verbal presentation, and this document was not in the packet, and it didn't say anywhere in the write-up that I saw that it was going to be Meals on Wheels. It does talk about a drive-through lane in item number 2, the last paragraph, which I would have a concern about. It's hard for me to see that, so I don't know where that's going to be. But I don't know if you're looking for another curb cut or if you're really going to have people go through that very narrow where the red arrows are. I think encouraging more traffic through there is probably not a good idea, especially because University, well, not right at that point, but soon in the city's future, are going to have dedicated bike lanes, and that is a biking area just east of there are dedicated bike lanes, and there are a lot of people walking in Drake. So I think that encouraging more driving, especially into a new restaurant, is not a good idea. And it didn't mention that it was Meals on Wheels. At least I didn't see that. I'm not sure how I missed it. But I guess there's 70 parking spots now in the lot, and it looks like you're going to add maybe 30 more or so. It seems like an awful lot of parking for people that are, coming and going. I mean, taking a car, when they take a car out and they leave a car, that's a net, same car. And I don't see on there, it's hard for me to see it, if there's any bike parking. There's none there today that I saw when I was at the property and took pictures. And I'm just concerned that we're going to be encouraging not only all these drivers going in there for a good thing, that's great, I want to feed people too, but then if we're also going to have a drive-through lane, we're going to be encouraging more people to come in and out of that very tight spot, is not really the best practice for people that are going to be walking and biking along there, because there's a lot of students, as we know. And I'm sorry. I guess and it didn't indicate in the write-up that they were tearing down the house. So I found out tonight that they're tearing down the house. So it's a little too bad. Maybe we could move the house. But yeah, I would hope that we would be a little more mindful on less cars and more neighborhood adherence to the walking and biking that's going on there today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? If not, the applicant, you have 5 minutes to address any of the concerns that have been raised.
Just to address a couple of the questions from Carol, there is bike parking. We do want to make sure this is a very walkable and bikeable location because we know people will be coming from the neighborhood. So it is small, so I can see where you wouldn't see it. But there would be bike parking along University. Sorry, I lost you. There you are. And we look forward to the new streetscape and look forward to learning more about that as it comes to life because we think that can only boost the walkability and attractiveness of the patio and everything. I believe, are there site plan pictures in here where we could show the bike rack? Let me take control. The front of the front? Or yeah, rendering. I'm using the wrong word.
So where those people are standing is like a whole line of bike racks is the idea, right next to the patio. And then that's basically a landscape. Sorry. So the right next to the patio where those people are standing there, that's a landscape area with bike parking. So several racks, not to a quantity today, but it'll be part of the site plan submission. But really, all that we can fit is our intent. So we definitely want it. We want to take bikes into the site right there at the front and bring them in through the front door. Same with pedestrians. You're also seeing, since we're talking about pedestrian activity, you're seeing that the existing front door is elevated above the streetscape. So we're planning for solving an accessible route from the sidewalk as well, and trying to provide a drop-off, carving a drop-off just next to the front door. If we could go to the site plan real quick. Just any version of it would be fine. There you go. So you can see that drop-off. So that's just carving away at current kind of landscape and whatnot against the building, because we want to be able to have people of all ages and in inclement weather and stuff still be dropped off. So it's a tricky site. Site circulation is a little odd, having to go through a narrow drive, but that's what exists. We think we can make it work. It is good that the program of cars kind of varies or offsets through the day, in that the delivery for Meals on Wheels or the delivery for the truck or the restaurant timing being open are all offset throughout the day. So we think we're doing a pretty good job of stacking the program that way. The drive-through, I believe, that's being referenced is the Meals on Wheels blue arrow setup. So at one point in this building's life, it was a bank, and that was a bank teller window. So we're going to bring that back to life for the loading zone, so we have a covered loading zone for the food. So we think it's a pretty good setup. There won't be a drive-through, visible from the street, and there won't be like drive-through traffic coming through the site for like meal pickup or anything. It's just for the Meals on Wheels program, and you load all that. I'm totally bought in.
You volunteer tomorrow.
That's right. I'll be there. No, and about 10:30 in the morning, we queue up the cars, and everybody loads up at that location.
The last thing I'd just say about the parking, because Carol mentioned the 70 spots now, a lot of that is dictated by the new uses, not just the Meals on Wheels, but also the cafe that is open to the public, so there needs to be parking, though we hope people walk and bike, and the second floor event space. So if there's an event, we need to make sure we're not pushing people out to park on the street because there's not enough adequate parking. So we need to make sure that we're meeting that need, not necessarily encouraging more driving, but safely meeting the need of people who would come for events and not just pushing them to park on University or across the street on a side street, where I know some people park now near that church. So just making sure that there's adequate parking for the events.
Okay, question?
If you were allowed to put less parking, would you want less parking? Or when you're calculating parking, are you saying this is what actually our site needs, or is it we have more parking because our ordinance is too high?
I think this number is about what we feel we need and aligns with what we believe the city is requiring based on our calculations. And like I said, I don't think we want to be in a position where you try to come to something and there's nowhere to park and you're having to cross a busy street. So this is the number we would like to have.
And then along where you have the closure on the southwest side, to the bottom of the, west-southwest side of this, is that a sidewalk, so if someone is approaching from the south and the west, they'd be able to walk or bike in, or
Yes.
wheelchair or stroller, but they wouldn't be able to drive through, is that correct?
Yes, so this, I don't know if you can see on your monitor what I'm doing, but you mean this piece?
Correct.
Yes, that is access for the neighborhood or for anyone. So we did hear that from neighbors. They want to eliminate a lot of car cut through, but they still like to get to the mailbox, which we found there's the mailbox on University, so they still want to be able to get through to our cafe, to our building, but then also to the other services on University.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll close the public hearing and have commissioners' discussion.
That's what, for this, since the only thing that's in front of us is the rezoning piece, and it's not the plan piece, I do want to aggressively support a change in zoning or ordinance that allows us to expand access to food, reduce food insecurity, and especially one that actually is driven on neighborhood connectivity. I'm also a Drake neighborhood resident as well. I think this is a great program, especially given the connectivity and things that Drake are really pushing for. And as we do start to see more needs for changing what we're doing for ensuring food access, obviously I'm sure Jason is, we've had discussions on this as well, as far as food pantries, other types of food rescue operations, those sort of things. This is a great step that I hope becomes a precedent that we should be modifying our ordinances and our zoning where necessary to ensure we can get good, safe, cost-effective food for people who actually have access to being food insecure.
Thank you.
Wholeheartedly push. I won't make a motion too early, but I would say this is an awesome thing, hopefully.
I wanted to talk about the sidewalk a little bit because I thought we had a committee designated to kind of deal with sidewalks.
As I've sat here and thought about this, I mean, the sidewalk thing is typically something we handle through the site plan process, and we did amendments to the code where we kind of prioritize sidewalks based off of MOVE DSM, the city's transportation plan, and we have priority 1, 2, and 3, where priority 1 routes, their staff has the ability to waive them if somebody wants to pay into an escrow in advance. Priority 2 and 3, those have to come to the commission for waiver, but typically those are routes that are less likely to be constructed in the near future. I couldn't tell you what this priority level is for here. I think as staff, we just thought that it made sense to identify that as an issue. In retrospect, I think that it's probably really a conversation to have at the site plan stage, because even if we waive it, even without if you guys say, hey, we're going to strike that as a zoning condition, it's still going to be noted in our review, and if they want to appeal it, they'll still have to go through those processes. It's just that when we drafted this at the time, we thought, well, let's just get it over with and have it out there up front. If it was a zoning condition, then it could not be waived. So if the commission wants to have that be evaluated down the road and have that information, that's fine. I would just, if you move the staff recommendation, just delete that. But you can certainly leave it in there too if you feel it's important.
I believe based on that feedback, as Jason mentioned, that this is an item that the site plan will likely review. I would be willing to make a motion based on the consultant's feedback that they will analyze the situation and also the light poles that are existing there. So I'm not sure how the site plan will, talking about undergrounding and all of that. I am positive that we will see this as a site plan just because of the site constraints and all of the things that may or may not be waived. So I will be making a motion to move staff except for the sidewalk requirement, since we'll see that at the site plan stage.
Great.
So that's your motion.
Also, if you remember, they were
Did you make-
asking
yeah.
if they could have the landscape island waiver considered at this time too, or just kick that down the road to the site.
I would say with the site plan, we can consider all of the site-related items, just like the sidewalk. So I will move staff without requirement of the sidewalk at this point.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay. It's unanimous. So thank you. So we're done with the public hearing items. We have another item on our agenda about approval of the 2022 schedule of meeting dates. But before that, because I should have done this at the beginning, I'd like to introduce a new staff member, Shrey Oshi Chakraborty. And she is, my understanding, is in the role that Eric had played before his move to enforcement.
Oh, let her come up. Her name, Shreyoshi Chakrabarty. She's started last week as a senior planner in our Planning and Urban Design Division, so we're excited to have her. She'll be a familiar face here.
Right.
And she's a local, and she's worked for the MPO. And so I don't know if you want to just share maybe just very briefly your background, your work with the MPO.
Sure. Thank you very much. As Bert mentioned, my name is Shreyoshi Chakraborty, and I'm a planner. I graduated from the University of Iowa in 2006 and have been working as a planner since then. Most recently, I work for the Des Moines Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, where I was doing a lot of land use and transportation planning work. And I'm very excited to be part of the City of Des Moines planning team. Thank you. And good to meet you all.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the item of our schedule of meeting dates for 2022.
Yeah, so the schedule that's proposed up on the screen right now is essentially the first and third Thursday of every month in 2022, except for the first Thursday in January, we would not be meeting. So.
I have a question. I know I'm going to be gone a couple of those. Is it possible to be on, join Zoom or join by phone call, or is that possible?
Yeah, I think we can look into the joining by phone call. We haven't, we'll have to just double check with both legal and the clerk's office on the equipment, but I know we have the ability to have folks call in. We have a new system here, so my memory on how to do it is on the old system. So maybe Tyler knows how, but as far as doing these meetings in Zoom, like it split,
Yeah.
or however you want to say it, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay. I mean, my concern is I'm out of town, but that doesn't mean I couldn't attend the meeting. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I don't believe we're going to be doing Zoom in the near future. I mean, not the planning staff. I mean, I think probably someday
But a phone call.
Right, we've traditionally done phone
But
calls.
that's what I was-
But we have to have quorum present,
Yeah, right.
But, yeah.
I'd like to be able to join by phone.
What gets hard
When
is
I'm
when we
gone.
have multiple requests. Like two people want to call at the same time, and it's challenging, but, so maybe it's whoever asks first.
We have another comment?
I'm not Irish, but March 17th is St. Patrick's Day and spring break, just FYI.
We talked about that too. I think the struggle we had is that if we drop that meeting, then it's just a really long stretch between March and, April 7th. Right, and then the next meeting is huge, I mean, I'll be gone that day. I'll make Bert come in. I'll be drinking beer, so.
So do we actually have to make a motion to accept this then?
But if the commission feels strongly, by
Yeah.
all means, it's in your purview to say, scratch that one.
Okay, so is there a motion to accept the dates that have been presented? Okay, everybody in favor, raise your right hand.
Jan moved that.
And it was unanimous. So thank you all, and I think our meeting's adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.